Hey there, welcome back to Nancy's Homestyle Kitchen. I am changing it up today. Normally, my husband is behind the camera and I do all my cooking. He films and he edits, but he is gone today. And today is Sunday. I went to church this morning, came home, and I thought, a long, low simmered spaghetti sauce sounded really good for dinner. So I am going to make Burrell's pasta Bolognese recipe. This is going to take probably 4 to 5 hours. So this is a long, slow cooking process. There's not a ton of ingredients, it doesn't look like, but this is something I've always wanted to try, and I've wanted to try filming on my own. So we're totally going to wing it, see how it goes, see how this turns out, and I'm just taking you along for the ride. So anyway, let's get started. The first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna heat up our pan, get that going. I have my food processor here, and the recipe calls for, I think it said 1 large onion or 2 small onions cut into 1-inch dice. So I had some small white onions. I actually had a little bit of leftover onion in my fridge, so I'm gonna use that. And all I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna kind of quarter them up, get them in the food processor. I also have 2 carrots, 4 cloves of garlic, and 3 stalks of celery. So I'm gonna add all of that to the food processor. Now, if you've watched my other videos many times, if not all the time, I tell you not to add your garlic until the end. But I'm gonna follow Anne's recipe verbatim, and she adds the garlic right at this point. So I'm gonna add the carrots. I hope this all fits. And the celery. And it says to puree this into a coarse puree. So let's get that all in here. I'm going to heat up some extra virgin olive oil, maybe 2 tablespoons. And let's get this pureed. So you might have to take the lid off, push the vegetables down that aren't getting chopped up, which is like the whole top layer. Let me push it down one more time. It just seems like it is those big chunks of carrots in there that don't want to go. This is hot. I'm going to turn that off for just a second. One thing you never want to do is start a pan of oil and walk away. I'm going to pulse it a couple times. Okay, that's good. If there's a big chunk, I'll just pull it out, because I think there might be one big chunk of carrots in there. So this oil's really hot, so I'm going to kind of pour away from me. And just get all of this in there. Let me turn the heat back on. And there is a couple chunks of carrots in there, so I will take those out. If you don't have a food processor, I think I would try it and just chop it as fine as you can. And if you have a blender, maybe put in much smaller batches than I did, put the finely chopped up vegetables in your blender and see if you can get that smoothed out a bit. Okay, so this is where the recipe talks about cooking this for about 20 minutes. So Let's see what it says. Add the pureed veggies and season generously with salt. Bring the pan to a medium-high heat and cook until all the water has evaporated and they become nice and brown, stirring frequently about 15 to 20 minutes. Be patient. This is where the flavors develop. And I went and watched her YouTube video from, I think her show is called Secrets of a Restaurant Chef. I watched her do this before I attempted this because I wanted to make sure I was doing it correctly. And she does. She cooks this medium high. She adds a ton of salt. I was really taken aback by how much salt she put in here. I can always add more salt later, but at this point I am gonna do a generous pinch or two of salt. It seems like a lot. And then you're cooking this, and essentially what she does is she cooks it down so much that all the water is evaporated, or the moisture that came from the vegetables, and it starts like browning on the bottom of the pan. And she is doing it in various steps, and I'll walk you through all the steps, because the browning on the bottom of the pan, I guess, is where the flavors really, really come from. So I'm gonna cook this for 15 to 20 minutes, and then I will be right back. I'm gonna throw in some close-up videos here while I'm doing this process so you can see directly into the pan. I just stopped recording on my main camera, and so this has only been in here maybe 3 minutes, all the vegetables and the salt, and you can see how much moisture is in there. I will do a close-up when I get at the end of the 20 minutes so you can see the brown bits on the bottom of the pan. Okay guys, it has been 20 minutes. I have been cooking and stirring very, very frequently the carrot, onion, garlic, celery puree mixture. So you can see all these brown bits in the pan. That's where all the flavor is. That's what you want. She says, trust the process, don't worry. So now to this, we're gonna add some ground beef. Okay, after 20 minutes, it is time to add the beef. So the recipe calls for 3 pounds of ground chuck brisket, or round, or a combination. I just went with what I could get at the store, so I opted for an 80-20 blend of ground beef because it does have some of the fat in there, and I know the flavor is gonna come from the fat. And this is just grass-fed 1 pound packs I got at my local grocery store. So now we just need to brown this. And again, it doesn't matter if some of this is browning and sticking on the bottom of the pan. She says brown it, brown it, brown it, brown it, like repeatedly. So that is what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna stand here with it, keep chopping it up, scraping the bits as it releases some of the fat and the juices. And I'm just gonna brown this ground beef. I think she said it takes 15 to 20 minutes. Let me check. Yeah, cook another 15 to 20 minutes. So I will show you guys some close-ups with my phone camera, and then we will be back when this is all done. All right, I am 10 minutes into getting this beef cooked. I'm gonna move this around a bit. As you can see, the fat from the beef is releasing all the brown bits, which is the flavor from the pan. And I'm just gonna continue cooking for about another 10 minutes till this is nice and fully browned. So Anne said to brown the meat until we have crud-dum. So that right there is crud-dum, meaning there is all kinds of stuff in the bottom of the pot. So let's add the tomato paste. This is 2 cups of tomato paste. We are going to add to the browned meat, and we're gonna cook this for 4 to 5 minutes. And this is gonna get brown and sticky in the bottom of the pan as well. When I was watching her video making this, she says, just to kind of get it all incorporated with the ground beef, and then just let it sit there and brown for a couple minutes, then try to turn it over and get the other side browned. And this is going to really stick to the bottom of the pan. This is how I make my Mexican rice, is I use tomato sauce, and I cook that. I cook the dry rice and the onion in the tomato sauce and get it nice and brown and caramely. And then once I add the chicken stock, it really gets all those bits off the bottom of the pan and just gives it like a nice roasted tomato flavor. Okay, so that's pretty well incorporated. I'm gonna trust Anne and trust the process and let it sit there for a few minutes and brown, and then we'll turn it over. Now, hearing about Anne's passing was very, very sad. I mean, she was an icon on the Food Network. Have watched her for years. I loved her uniqueness, her sense of humor, her style, and she was not only savage in the kitchen as a cook, but she was savage with contestants on various shows, and I just really appreciated her honesty and her approach to things. And she said she learned how to cook this in Tuscany, so you know what? I think this is a perfect way to honor her memory, and I hope it just turns out great. Ooh, I can already smell the tomato paste browning. So let's give that a flip as well as we can. And I think if you're kind of new at cooking, it's going to be hard to tell if it's browning or burning. So just kind of trust your instincts. If you're worried that it's going over into that burnt phase, just go ahead and proceed with the next step. But if you're pretty confident that it's browning nicely and not burning, just keep cooking it. So while that's cooking on the other side, I'm going to get ready the 3 cups of red wine. So I'm using an Italian Chianti. Ooh, my goggles are fogged up. It is steamy in here. An imported Chianti from Italy. She used a heavy Cabernet. You just want a good, bold red wine. I'm not going to pour it in yet. I'm just pouring it over this in case it splatters a little bit. I'd rather have it splatter over my pan. Okay, so there's 2 cups. We'll probably use most of that red wine. Oh yeah, this is really getting nice and brown on the bottom. Or she says crud. You want all the crud. And I'm not trying to really scrape it up too much right now. I'm just going to give this another minute or so, and then we'll add the wine. Here is the tomato paste cooking in with the ground beef. It's been on here for about 4 minutes. I'm going to give it another minute or so. You can see the tomato paste is really dried. A lot of the moisture in the paste, whatever little bit was in there, has pretty much evaporated. Let me see if I could show you. I wish the lighting was a little better, but there you go. That's the brown bits in the bottom of the pan that you are looking for. Okay, I think that is good. I can smell the tomato paste getting a little toasty and roasty. I don't want it to go over into the burn phase, so I'm going to go ahead and add the wine. So here's the first 2 cups. I'm going to need to transfer this to a bigger pot for sure. But let me finish with the wine process. So it's 3 cups total of the wine, which is almost a complete bottle. And this isn't an expensive wine. I think it was about $10. I mean, there may be 2 tablespoons left in that. So for this step, she wants you to cook it for 4 to 5 minutes. So I'm gonna just kind of stir. This is where I can start, oops. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna need to transfer this to a bigger pot. I'm gonna start scraping off the bits on the bottom of the pan to get all that flavor unlocked and incorporated with the tomato paste and red wine liquid here. And I'll do that process. I'm gonna transfer this to a bigger pot and then I'll come back and show you the next step. So this is what I did. I turned everything off. I got my big sauce pot out. I just took it over to the sink and I dumped pretty much everything out of the frying pan into this big pot. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn this on to about medium. And in this one, I'm gonna turn this back on, and that little splash of wine that was left in here, I mean, yeah, it's not too much. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna use that moisture in that wine to get all of these last little bits up off the bottom of this pan. And then I'll transfer all of this flavor into there. And then we'll go ahead and cook this for 4 to 5 minutes. I think it says reduce by half. Let me check. Red wine and reduce by half. So that's what we'll do. Yeah, and this is coming up really, really easy. I mean, it looks like you're gonna have such a hard time cleaning this pan when you're done, and you're not. That juice in the liquid just really gets in there and releases everything from the pan. So this is good. Let's just get this over there right now. Hopefully you guys can see this. And you can see how clean really the bottom of that pan is. It's just heavy, so I'm gonna set it down. But really, most everything came out. Let me set it back here, actually. Okay, then I'm gonna move this back over to this burner. And we'll go ahead, just gonna stir this in. And now I'm gonna reduce that wine by half. So now I just put this back on the burner over here and I'm gonna let it reduce by half. I have it on about medium-high heat and we'll cook it for about 4 minutes and let that wine reduce. And if you get some bits or some crud on the bottom of this pan, again, don't worry, because then we're gonna be adding water a little bit at a time, well, a lot at first, and then over the cooking process, we're gonna keep adding water, let it evaporate and reduce, keep adding water, and that's what's gonna build up the flavor. And by adding that water, it's gonna help release all the bits off the bottom of the pan. So just look at this meaty, like ragu as the wine is reducing in this. I wish you guys could smell this. It smells amazing. So something else I wanted to share with you is I found this Instagram account. It's called Friday Night Porch Party. And this gentleman in the South, I believe his name is Jay. Hi, Jay. Makes dinner for his friends and family every Friday night, and they enjoy it out on the porch. It's a great account, and he made this within the last couple weeks. And I thought, oh my gosh, that looks wonderful. So I messaged him. I asked him a couple things about what he did, if he tweaked the recipe. And he was so kind, replied, and I told him that I was going to be making this. And so I just wanted to give a shout out to him for helping inspire today's recipe and for me to try something that I've never done before, which is cook a spaghetti sauce for hours and hours and hours and see how it turns out. All right, so we are at the last step before we let this simmer for the rest of the day. The wine has been reducing for about 4 to 5 minutes. Now I'm going to add water. And it says add water till it covers the meat by an inch. So I'm going to give it a stir. And I think that is pretty good. We're going to keep adding water during the process. I have the water in here. I have a bundle of thyme that I washed and tied with the kitchen twine. We're going to throw that whole thing in, as well as 3 bay leaves. So I'm just going to bring that to a boil and then reduce it to simmer. Now that we have the water in there, let me read to you what the next steps are. Toss in the bay leaves and the bundle of thyme, stir to combine, bring to a boil, reduce to simmer, stirring occasionally. As the water evaporates, you will gradually need to add about 2 to 3 cups at a time. So we're just going to keep adding water. Don't be shy about adding water during the cooking process. You can always cook it out. This is a game of reduce and add more water. This is where big, rich flavors develop. If you try to add all the water in the beginning, you will have boiled meat sauce rather than a thick, meaty sauce. Stir and taste frequently. Season with salt. If needed, you probably will. Simmer 3.5 to 4 hours. So not a ton of ingredients, definitely a few steps at the beginning to get everything going. But once you have everything in the pot, I think the ingredients are pretty simple. And then it's just a matter of doing something around the house, in the kitchen, coming and checking on it every little bit or so, putting some more water in there and just letting it do its thing. So I will come back in 3.5 to 4 hours and show you what it looks like. Okay, it's been about 4 hours and the sauce is done. I'm just boiling some water to cook the pasta, and we need to heavily salt the pasta water, and says to make it taste like the ocean. So I'm just gonna dump the rest of the kosher salt that I have in there. And then I am cooking 8 ounces of spaghetti pasta. The recipe calls for a full pound, but it's just my husband and I. So I'm just gonna do half of the recipe, and I'm actually gonna freeze half of the Bolognese sauce. The recipe also says, don't break your pasta. The recipe also says to cook it for 1 minute less than the instructions on the packet. So my packet here, this Burrell brand pasta, says cook for 10 minutes for al dente. So I'm going to set my timer and cook this for 9 minutes. While this is going in the salted pasta water, let's take the herbs out of the sauce. So I'm going to turn that off and get my hot pads. And I have a plate with some tongs, and I'm just going to grab that whole bunch of thyme that we put in there. You see, I have grabbed a couple pieces that dislodged from the bundle, and I just removed those as I was cooking. I know there's 3 bay leaves in here, so I found one. Let me find the other 2, and anything else. Here's 1 and 3. Okay, so I have all of the herbs out, and I just want to give it a stir and make sure there's no other pieces of thyme that have dislodged and are in the sauce. Oops, there is 1 more. Let me grab that. Oh my gosh, I lied. 2 more. Okay, maybe I need to go through it a little bit more. It seemed like a lot of time to me to put in here, but I've been tasting it as it's been cooking, and I've been adding a little bit of water at a time and letting it reduce. And it tastes really good. It does have, definitely there is a wine flavor. but it is not soupy. It's very saucy and meaty, and I think it's going to be fantastic. Okay, so the other thing that she says is to add half a cup of grated Parmesan. This is a Parmigiano Reggiano block that I got from Costco, and I just shredded it really fine with my microplane. And this is salty cheese, so it's adding a bit of saltiness into the sauce. So just make sure that you're kind of leaving room for that additional salt component to be added to the sauce at the end. Okay, I'm going to finish cooking the pasta. I'm going to reserve a little bit of the pasta water, drain it, and we'll be right back to finish it and plate it up. All right, we're at the end. I have reserved half of this sauce that I'm going to freeze for later. I have my pasta cooked and ready to go. This is back up to a simmer. So all I'm going to do now is add the pasta directly to the bowl or to the pot. And then it said to reserve some of the pasta water. So I'm going to put maybe half of that, because the recipe said reserve a half a cup, but because I only have half of the sauce, I'm just going to do a quarter cup. And I'm going to bring this back up because we need to finish cooking that pasta for just a couple minutes in that Bolognese sauce. Okay, this is what it looks like. Direct in the pot. We're finishing that last minute or so on the pasta, so it's perfectly al dente. And it is looking and smelling absolutely fantastic. And in order to see if this pasta is ready, I'm actually just going to try a piece. It is al dente and very good. And we'll plate it up and have a taste test. I'm just going to use some kitchen tongs, and you can see how meaty this sauce is. It is not runny whatsoever. Do that, and then I'm going to grate a little bit of Parmesan cheese right on the top. And where is my fork? Is right here. Let me come up and show you. You see all the steam coming off? It's really hot. And let's give it a try. Ooh, that's gonna be a really big bite. Lady bites on TV. Come on. Oh my gosh. You guys, this is embarrassing. I don't want to take this big old bite. Okay, I'm going in true Italian style. Ready? It is very savory. You can definitely taste the tomatoes, the wine, the herbs. It has a beefiness to it. It's just a very thick, rich Bolognese sauce. It's a winner. Anne really knew what she was doing. So anyway, I hope you like this video. If you do, please consider liking and subscribing, and I'll be back next week with another home style dish from my kitchen.